Okay, it looks like we have at least the majority of the advisory committee. Representative Fay, do you want to lead introductions based on the order you see folks, or would you rather that I do that from my end?
Happy to do that. That's fine. Thank you. And I just want to say thanks for everyone. Thanks, Beth, actually, for calling it and giving us the opportunity to participate in this meeting by Zoom. And I will start with introductions. The first person I see is, let's see, Nancy.
Thank you, Representative. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nancy McBrady. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I am stepping in today for Commissioner Beal. She has something going awry with her home septic. So let's cross fingers for her today. I know that she really wished she could be here. So much has happened in the last few months. And I'll do my best to ensure to bring her up to speed for the outcome of today's meeting. Thank you.
The next person I see is Commissioner Loism.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Loism, Commissioner at the Department of Environmental Protection.
And I see Kasia.
I'm Keisha Holmes from Misty Brook Farm in Albion, representing agriculture.
Senator Bennett, your video is frozen, but you're next on my screen.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay? It's Rick Bennett. I'm State Senator for Western Maine. 14 towns from Androscoggin, Oxford, and Cumberland counties. Good to be with you all.
Jenny?
Good morning, all. My name is Jenny Tilton Flood. I'm a dairy farmer from Flood Brothers Farm in Clinton, Maine, and I represent a seat of agriculture here.
Diane Rowland.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diane Rowland. I'm the Dean of Earth Life Health at the University of Maine and Director of the Experiment Station.
Adrian.
I'm Adrian Lee, Newbeat Farm, and I am on the Finance and Business Support Subcommittee and represent agriculture.
And Nancy Beardsley.
Hi, I'm Nancy Beardsley. I'm the Deputy Director at Maine CDC.
Melissa Hamlin.
Hi, I'm Melissa Hamlin. I'm the newest member of the PFAS Fund team working with Beth. My title is PFund Management Specialist, and I will be responsible for the land acquisition program as well as assisting with administration of other elements.
And did I get all the members of the committee? I see everyone with their video cameras on. I think I've called on except for the amazing Beth Valentine.
Well, hardly. Welcome, everybody. Beth Valentine, Director of the PFAS Fund. As I noted in my email, I want to give all of you a status update on the implementation of the PFAS Fund. I am also letting a few folks in still from the waiting room. So I'll give an update, and then Deputy Commissioner Brady will discuss a $5 million grant the department has received from USDA. And then as a group, I want to have a discussion to plan for our upcoming public hearing scheduled for the Agricultural Trade Show on January 11th. Just a word to the guests joining us online. You are most welcome to be here, and I'm pleased to see that there are so many folks. I just want to note that this is a working meeting, so you're welcome to listen and take notes, but there will not be a period for public comment during the meeting today. Are there any general comments before we get started?
I just wanted to say thanks, Beth. I'm Representative Jessica Fay. I represent House District 86, which is the towns of Raymond, Casco, Fry Island, and a part of Poland. And I'll turn it over to you, Beth, for the rest of the meeting. And if you need anything from me, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm trying to share my screen. Hang in there. Okay. So are you seeing a title slide now? Okay, excellent. So just to orient ourselves, this should be a familiar graphic. We began the groundwork for this program a year ago. We met for the first time in November of 2022. We had an intense period of planning through winter and spring of this year. The committee approved the implementation plan in July, and now we have moved into implementation. We have been working to establish internal policies and procedures to distribute funds, and we are on the cusp. Well, we're in the midst of rulemaking, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. I anticipate beginning to distribute funds before the end of the year in small measure and really ramping up over the course of 2024. And then, of course, we have annual reports due to the legislature, and this is going to be an ongoing iterative process developing over time. So where are we now? We have drafted rules to implement various elements of the PFAS fund. You can see the list of chapters here. The first 5 deal with direct support to impacted farmers, and then real estate purchases, competitive research grants, and financial support for blood serum testing and mental health care. And I'll discuss each of these topics in a little more detail as I go through the presentation. The public comment period is open now. The draft rules are available on our website, DACF's website. There is a public hearing scheduled for December 18th, so 2 weeks from today. It will be a hybrid meeting, assuming it's not snowing, in the Deering Building on the East Campus in Augusta, as well as via Zoom. People who want to participate via Zoom need to pre-register. It's a webinar as opposed to a meeting. It gives us a little more control over when people are able to speak. The comment period will remain open through December 28th, assuming that there are no major changes required as a result of this public process. The rules could be in effect by the end of January 2024. Of course, if there are substantive changes, that timeline gets pushed back. This is a DACF rulemaking proceeding, so advisory committee members don't necessarily have to attend. Certainly you are welcome, and I invite everybody to look at the draft rules, give them your consideration, and provide feedback. So, direct support to farmers, where are we? We will begin processing some invoices for payment as soon as this week. Under the Bureau of Agriculture, Food and Rural Resources existing PFAS response program, they have the Farm Viability Program, which for going on 2 years has been providing direct financial and technical support to farmers. Some of those programs will be shifting to the PFAS fund. The first of these will be no-cost technical assistance for things like business planning. So applications that have already been submitted have kind of been on hold until we had the necessary procedural mechanisms in place. Those are now in place. Melissa is now on board. So with those two pieces coming together, we will start processing payments for business planning this week. I guess a word about the business planning. In some cases where a farm has applied for a farm viability investments, the department has wanted to take a step back and to have someone with kind of, a business degree, business acumen, look at whether, what is the return on investment? Is this enterprise likely to succeed at this location, given the characteristics of the site? So the business planning very much feeds into future payments under the Farm Viability Program. So soon after the rules are finalized, the PFAS fund will take responsibility for the expanded income replacement program. As I think you all know, the Bureau of Ag, Food and Rural Resources has been providing up to 1 year of lost income for impacted farmers. Under the PFAS fund, we can provide up to 2 years of lost income. So that will be coming online soon. The administrative cost grants, this is something new. In our implementation plan, we talked about compensation for time spent on PFAS response. And what we have come up with to address that need are these one-time grants of about $3,500. That accounts for 80 hours of a farm manager's time at the average farm manager's rate as determined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics for Maine. And this is intended to cover costs that are common to any impacted farm in the initial stages. So time spent with DACF field staff, testing, strategizing how to respond, communicating with customers. That will be coming online once the rules are finalized. The Bureau of Ag, Food and Rural Resources presently pays for infrastructure projects up to $150,000. The PFAS fund will take over responsibility for projects above that threshold. Loan assistance, the PFAS fund can pay for costs associated with getting a loan when that loan is necessitated by PFAS contamination. On my slides where you see text in the sort of brown color in italics, that references ongoing work within the department. So it's not really public facing, but it's the groundwork that we are doing to allow to implement these programs. So related to all of these direct support programs, we're developing a master application so that impacted farmers can fill out one application for any program, whether it is paid for through the PFAS fund or the Bureau of Agriculture, and we'll sort out internally who gets that application and who acts on it. Additionally, we're developing outreach materials so that as these new programs come online, we can inform folks that they are available and how to apply and what documentation they need to provide, et cetera. So that is sort of like near term. And then on the horizon are both the PFAS response kit and PFAS response navigators. You'll recall from the implementation plan that the PFAS response kit is intended to be a binder that is updated over time. It will contain information about programs available through the department as well as from other service providers. It will have recommendations for production guidance and crisis communication and how to access health supports. So it's really meant to be sort of a one-stop shop. And the response navigators, that is a human being who can provide that same information. So these two initiatives really need to be developed in tandem. I've been exploring options for contracting for the PFAS response navigators. I have some good options, but it seems like in whichever option we choose, the department is going to have a significant role in training these navigators because, of course, we want them to be providing information that's consistent with the department's objectives. So that's kind of on the horizon. Maybe midsummer-ish. We'll get the first programs launched and simultaneously be working on this response kit and contracting for the navigators. So land acquisition and stewardship. Once the rules are finalized, we can begin accepting inquiries from farmers who are willing or interested in selling their land. Sort of leading up to that, the department, in particular, Melissa, is developing the application materials and our internal policies. I issued a request for proposals to develop a pre-qualified list of appraisers, which streamlines the appraisal process. The deadline was Friday. I had, when I issued the RFP, I emailed all 243 licensed general real property, licensed certified general real property appraisers in the state of Maine. Of those 243, 4 responded to the RFP. So not as robust response as I would like. We will need to go through the evaluation process and hopefully have a short list of appraisers that we can readily reach out to when the time comes. The department will also be establishing a review panel to help prioritize land purchases. So that's all sort of the internal workings at the department related to near-term land acquisitions. So on the horizon, once all of those steps are in place, we can begin the first purchases. The purchases are going to take time. We'll have the initial inquiry, but then the department is going to have to do our due diligence. We need the appraisals, the boundary surveys, environmental assessments. We need to work with DEP's Voluntary Response Action Program to develop covenants that will be recorded with the deed that place restrictions on the use of the property. I wish I could give an estimate of when we will be able to close on the first properties, but it's really difficult to say at this point. Once we have purchased property, the department is going to be responsible for stewarding that land. So we'll be working with our advisory committee to come up with recommendations for each property. So whether it's leased out for another agricultural purpose, maintained for conservation or recreation, is it sold? That is going to really vary based on each property. And then also on the horizon is developing guidance related to land transactions. So this will be information to realtors and appraisers and municipalities, lenders. What should they be taking into consideration when they are involved in a transaction involving PFAS impacted property? And a bit beyond the horizon, something that's unclear at this point is conservation payments. You will recall from the plan that the department wants to explore some sort of mechanism whereby farmers could be paid some sort of a rental payment to take impacted land out of production and maintain it for a conservation purpose. So whether that be wildlife habitat, carbon sequestration goals, so that for folks that aren't really interested in selling their property, but they can't produce income from the land, is there something else they could do? So an example is the USDA's Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, which currently will pay a fee to farmers over, I think it's 10-15 year period for conservation goals generally related to water quality. But could that program or something similar to it be expanded to embrace PFAS impacted property? So that's something we're definitely exploring, but the contours at this point are very unclear. Research. Once the rules are finalized, the department will be able to issue a request for applications for proposals. I'm hopeful that that can be done this spring. Simultaneously, we will be establishing a review panel with some scientific expertise to help us evaluate and select projects for funding. So on the horizon, once we have the RFA, we will actually have the first awards. And then beyond the horizon, the department, within the PFAS fund implementation plan, we have establishment of an experiment station. That's going to come secondary to land acquisition. We have to have a number of properties first, and then we can evaluate where does it make sense to potentially establish an experiment station. We'll be looking for partners, both with academic institutions and federal agencies. Also, sort of beyond the horizon is compiling, sharing scientific information. Of course, that has to come after the research itself has been conducted. We've written into the plan and the draft rules that as a condition of accepting PFAS funding for research, researchers have to agree to share their raw data and to pursue publication in open access journals. So it's very much built into the plan, but again, it's going to be down the road before we have the information to share. So health-related initiatives, imminent in the near future, will be an online survey to help DACF refine what mental health offerings we will support through the PFAS fund. Generally speaking, folks eligible for both mental health services and blood testing include impacted farmers, their families and workers, as well as non-farm residents whose well water tests above threshold. So currently the 20 parts per trillion, sum of 6 PFAS compounds. We have a sense of the type of services that may be helpful, but the survey is to help refine whether in-person counseling is preferred over online. Do people want more peer support services or web-based resources? So the survey is drafted mid to late December. It will go live on the DACF website. We will announce the launch of the survey through DACF's channels, as well as through many partner organizations. We will reach out directly to farmers and try to reach non-farm residents as well. And next up is kind of in the soonish category, not necessarily related to finalizing the rules. Some of this work will happen independently of the rules. One important feature is finalizing an MOU between DACF and Maine CDC for the work that Maine CDC is doing related to supporting health concerns of folks exposed to PFAS through agriculture. Once the rules are finalized, though, to contradict myself immediately, DACF will initiate contracts for blood testing and mental health services. Maine CDC has started to pull together a panel to advise on a clinical trial. And with regards to the clinical trial, you'll recall from the plan that the fund can support a clinical trial to explore modalities to reduce a person's PFAS body burden. But of course, certainly not the Department of Ag, nor Maine CDC has experience conducting clinical trials. So this advisory panel, CDC is pulling together an advisory panel to help determine what sort of clinical trial is potentially possible given our financial constraints, with the goal being that the department, DACF, would contract with a vendor to design a clinical trial for us. The other route is to issue a request for information. And under this scenario, again, DACF will issue a request for information to try to identify ongoing clinical trials that could potentially be expanded to include a cohort from Maine. And in that case, if we are able to tap into an existing program or study, that's likely to be less expensive as well as more timely. So at this point, no determination has been made, but that's the two routes CDC is taking the lead on exploring. Sort of on the horizon, CDC will use its emergency rulemaking authority to make PFAS, the results of PFAS blood tests, a notifiable condition. So this is comparable to current pediatric lead testing. When lead test results are reported back to CDC, if they're high, a physician or toxicologist from the department can reach out to that individual to ensure that exposure routes have been minimized and connect them with treatment as necessary. So it would be a similar model for PFAS exposure. CDC is working on, will be working to develop educational resources for clinicians and the public related to the health impacts of PFAS exposure. In part, they are waiting for the MOU I mentioned between DACF and CDC to be completed, bring on some staff. And also they're waiting for ATSDR. You'll recall that I guess it was July 2022, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine came out with some guidelines for clinical practice based on PFAS exposure. And ATSDR is the organization, and please, someone from CDC, Nancy, if I'm getting this all muddled, correct me. ATSDR is the agency that's responsible for really providing guidance for clinicians. So based on staff as well as this federal guidance, Maine CDC will eventually be developing educational resources. Do you want to add further to that, Nancy?
I think you did great, unless Nancy Beardsley would like to.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's so rare that we have two Nancys on one meeting. It's great though. I was gonna say, I think you've got it. That's based on the summaries that Dr. Benowitz and Andy provided.
Okay, thanks. CDC is also working on a farm worker soil exposure study. So looking at the extent to which absorption of PFAS through the skin or incidental inhalation or ingestion is a concern. So they're working on some modeling now, maybe some pilot work in the summer of 2024, but their first real field season is anticipated to be the summer of 2025. And also on the horizon is access to mental health services, and I should have included, oh, and I did, financial assistance for blood testing. So once the rules are finalized, the department will contract for services and then get the word out to eligible individuals that those programs are up and running. And then sort of beyond the horizon, some things we want to do, but the contours aren't yet clear, are the medical monitoring and the clinical trial. We did not anticipate providing support for medical monitoring in the first year of the program, just because we need to get everything else, most significantly the blood testing, up and running. And we can anticipate that based on those blood test results, there will be some individuals who are advised to have sort of enhanced medical monitoring to hopefully to, identify conditions early, or, just to be on the lookout for conditions that someone with high levels of PFAS in their blood serum are more prone to contract. But since the medical monitoring builds on the blood testing, that's something for down the road. Similarly, the clinical trial, whether we're able to tap into an existing study or fund our own study, there are many steps between here and actually conducting the trial. So it's something we're working toward. The specifics are yet to be determined. And I think that is it for kind of a quick summary of what's been going on over the past 6 or so months. Does anyone have questions for me?
Beth, I have a quick question. You had mentioned in the beginning of your presentation about providing feedback for the committee in particular, but in general, at the public hearing around the rules. And I just was wondering if you could clarify, I think particularly for committee members, what that looks like in terms of, I assume it means testifying during the public process and giving input on those rules specifically, since that is outside of this committee. But I just want to make sure that folks have a sense of what that looks like and what role they might play, if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So the public comment period for the rules is open now. There's a public hearing on December 18th. And being a public comment period, the committee, now is when the advisory committee should be reviewing and commenting on those rules. So whether you wanted to do it at the hearing or in writing, my email address is tied to the rulemaking announcement. Excuse me. So I'm the person that will be getting the comments. So for the December 18th hearing and the comment period in general, members of this advisory committee are treated no different from other members of the public. The January 11th public hearing, that is an advisory committee public hearing, which by statute we're required to have 2 annually. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I want to dedicate some time during this meeting to planning for that public hearing.
Thank you for that. I see my co-chair, Senator Brenner, here. It's nice to see you. Did you want to introduce yourself, Stacy?
Oh, thank you, Rep. Fay. Stacy Brenner. I represent Senate District 30, which includes all of Gorham and most of Scarborough. And Director Valentine, I just want to congratulate you on so much good and solid work. Thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner McBrady, would you like to talk about the USDA grant?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. This is basically expounding upon information that we released publicly announcing the grant back in mid-October, announcing that the state of Maine had been selected to receive $5 million in federal grant monies from USDA to augment our existing PFAS response effort and really adding to that. You may recall that the federal Congress passed its Consolidated Appropriations Act in 2023, which included this $5 million grant award via USDA. And Maine qualified for this grant because we do have an existing program and we have procedures in place to assist farmers and food producers in the state. So it was a really wonderful match that we were able to benefit from. And we are utilizing the funding in a number of areas that will be very familiar to the work done by this committee and by the PFAS fund, as well as the Bureau's PFAS response program. We will be allocating the funding across a couple of buckets. $3 million will be funding research projects up to $500,000 apiece. We will also allocate $1 million of the grants to support on-farm infrastructure enhancements. And we're going to be allocating around $100,000 for business planning and other assistance work for the farms, whether it's engineering or marketing, rebranding, et cetera. Some of those critical business assistance grants is what we'll be funding with that additional monetary support. And then we will also be essentially subawarding funds to Maine CDC to support a number of their operations, a lot of which Beth just walked us through, including as well enhancements to the PFAS lab that CDC has the ability to do some dedicated PFAS analysis there. So overarchingly, what this grant does is, I think, really emphasizes and enhances the work that we're already doing in the state, but allows the funds to go further. It's a significant contribution by the federal government, that really can enhance all that we here in the state of Maine have dedicated to PFAS response planning and programmatics. So we're just really thrilled to be able to put that into practice. Since being told that we were the recipients in October, we've worked really hard, and more credit should be given to Beth for helping steer the procedural process of work plan and budgetary hurdles that we had to get through. That was just approved last week, and we're able to move forward with the USDA funding from here on out. So just a really nice complement to the work that we're doing here in the state and to the fund. And we're just really excited. I would also mention that we believe very strongly that we can utilize this federal funding from USDA for the benefit of other farms and programs throughout the United States. Contingent upon all of the work that we're doing, we need to be able to provide guidance, resources, learnings, et cetera, to other programs that might be established elsewhere in the future. So we're taking very seriously the opportunity to use these funds to make that happen. Any questions?
Well, hearing none, that was a clear and comprehensive overview. So let's turn our attention now to January 11th. I have scheduled a room at the Civic Center for 3 hours. I'm thinking that might be a little long, but let's talk about what we want to cover during the public hearing, and then I can, scale back the time if necessary. As I noted in my email, I think it makes sense to give an update maybe similar to the one I just provided. And by January, hopefully, the rules for research will be close to being finalized. So we can start drafting the request for applications, which is researchers may be familiar with requests for proposals. It's more or less the same thing. So this will be the document that researchers will respond to with research proposals. So we'll need to identify what sort of research we want to prioritize. We have a list of preliminary topics in the PFAS Fund implementation plan. We can maybe use that as a starting point. I don't know how people feel about, having the big Post-it notes and give people stickers and say, I really want research on plant uptake or animal depuration. last year's public hearing, I know a number of people were reluctant to speak in public, understandably. So I think maybe the more, I guess I'm looking for ideas to make the meeting more useful and interactive, and I'm certainly open to suggestions.
Beth, I think that your suggestion of having like a place where people could put some sort of like, whether it's sticky notes or kind of almost have some spots where people are not having to raise their hand, but places that in the room that they could provide feedback on, like you're suggesting, I think is a great idea. Or just trying to find ways to, like you're saying, catch the people that are maybe hesitant to raise their hand in a public forum, especially if they don't feel 100% confident in their knowledge base around PFAS.
Okay, Jenny?
Yeah, I would also applaud that effort and also make just a couple of quick requests that any information that can be physically handed to someone or provided to them, whether it's just simply a QR code they can scan so they can go directly to the website to sign up for information and be on the mailing list. That would be helpful. And also requiring any media to be in the back of the room. That was one of the biggest issues that faced a lot of the folks that had come prepared to speak. It was really hard for them to do so with the cameras where they were. It was awkward for them and made it more difficult for them.
Yeah, understood.
I just want to follow up and say that I just think it would be really important for us to not only provide the opportunity for comment from the public, but also to be able to provide the public with the work that's been done. We know there's been a lot of work done. We know it's come a long way, but I think it's really hard for some of the public to understand that if all they read or see is a long timeline. They don't necessarily see that work and what's been accomplished here, and a lot has been accomplished.
Right. So what form would that take? Like a handout document, like?
Maybe even just something visual that encompasses the timeline of the work that's been done. And if there is a deliverable where people can sign up for more information, or if they need assistance directing them exactly who to go see, if they're there at the show, that would be helpful too, I think. But I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, I mean, I also think what the presentation that you just gave us, if you could kind of, for however you felt comfortable with that, in like a bit more of a condensed form or something that people, I know you don't want to print off a ton of copies of it, or just have there be a link to that for people to look at themselves. And also to help them maybe have people have a better, if someone came to that public hearing after kind of seeing kind of that body of work that has been going on, and also the plan for that timeline, it might help kind of answer some questions before they bring them up too. That would, yeah, I think could be helpful.
Okay.
And if they do have the opportunity to visualize the work that's been done, like Adrian was talking about, sort of like if it was sort of like a booth at one part of the room, then they may be more apt as they move through that and look at that to be engaged with the idea of the Post-its and providing comment. They may not be comfortable with asking a question in a hearing period, but they may be more apt to say, okay, this, I want to know, maybe does this apply to me? And then put those Post-its up or submit those questions, however, comments or questions that way.
Right. And something I should have mentioned, the department, so both the PFAS Fund and the Bureau of Ag, Food and Rural Resources, as well as DEP, CDC, Cooperative Extension, some of the egg service providers, we are going to have a shared table for the duration of the egg trade show focused on PFAS response. So we hope to have at least 2 people at the table at all times. Obviously, every agency won't be there all the time, but our materials will be there. So, and I don't know in relation to our room where that table's going to be, but certainly that's something we can sort of cross-pollinate, leave information at the table for, you know, the Tuesday and Wednesday leading up to our hearing on Thursday to let folks know what to expect during the hearing. And during the hearing, we can direct people back to that table for specific questions that aren't within DACF's purview.
One thing related to, maybe it's not so much related to the public hearing on what the advisory committee, but more broadly, the work that DACF has done. I feel like it'd be really helpful to have tangible, like if someone's curious about what is being done, to have some like tangible models, like that are maybe anonymous, but like example A of like, this is how the department has responded to this on X farm, like trying to let, and then another to help a farm that might be considering seeking out support, or other farmers that are just kind of curious what is actually, how farms are actually getting supported with PFAS through like the PFAS response suite of work. So just so it's not just kind of up in this, like, just so it's more tangible, you know. I would
like case studies.
Yeah, I guess I would say like kind of case studies, if you could have that be anonymous, but like have a few different types of farms and different ways that they're getting support. Because I think farmers are gonna want to kind of see what it really looks like on the ground at farms and how this is potentially helping other farms work through this.
Yep.
So along those lines, Beth, could the experiment station be a part of that table so we can talk about Hunter Farm?
Yeah, actually, Melissa from Cooperative Extension is taking the lead on organizing this table.
Beth, I have a question. Is there something specific that that we're trying to focus on for this hearing? Is there a something that the department or that this committee would like to walk away with a better understanding of something? And sort of the follow-up to that is, you know, we're used to, or at least the legislators and folks who do hearings all the time are used to specific formats, and public hearings, generally people are reacting to something. So I guess I think I heard you know, that there would be information available and that the public hearing would be seeking feedback on the information. But I want to make sure that we have some direction and a sense of what we want to get out of it, so that it's a really good use of our time. And then also, I do want to encourage every member of the advisory committee to attend, so that we can hear in real time what folks are sharing with us.
Yeah, I like how you framed that. So I just pulled out the statute, and the general charge for the advisory committee's public hearings is to seek input from the public on efforts to meet the purposes of the fund. So very broad. But I think that means, are we getting it right? So how do we invite, one, I guess we have to provide enough information so that the public understands where we're going, and then invite them to let us know, are we getting it right or not? And if we're not, what should we be doing differently?
I think that's a really good start. I do, for sure.
So maybe in addition to, the Commissioner Loisem.
Beth, I noticed that it looks like the public hearing on the draft rules will be this, I think, coming up in the next couple of weeks. What's the end of your public comment period for that?
It's December 28th.
So this January public hearing will happen technically after your public comment period and your record for that have closed. But you might have people who would come who would raise some things that might be relevant for consideration as part of that rulemaking. So I don't have an answer for you, but maybe a suggestion that procedurally you may want to think about a way that you would be able to take into consideration any sort of unexpected comments you got that were really, best solved by an adjustment to any of those draft rules.
Yeah, good point. I imagine we can always extend a comment period. And then there's tension between wanting to get rules implemented and delaying the process. But if the reason for the delay is to get better rules, maybe those couple of weeks is time well spent. Yeah, I can explore that.
Beth, I also recognize that this is a public, the opportunity for the public at the trade show to provide input to the process, to the fund, to the overarching design. However, I think it will be important for there to be a grounding by you and perhaps members of the advisory committee themselves who participated over the last year in giving a high level informative overview of what has been achieved. I think to the point, just made by Adrian, a lot of work has been happening, but this is pretty complicated. So to the extent we can provide, again, high level, easily digestible bullet points, cliff notes of what the PFAS fund has done, what is in process, what the rules will accomplish, and ultimately what this all means, to then allow for some feedback thereafter. I don't want that to eat up too much of the time. Hopefully people who are coming and attending are attuned somewhat to the PFAS fund already, but there's going to be a wide array of experiences and awareness. So if people find that amenable, maybe you could devote 15 minutes. And I hear you, Adrian, not just having PowerPoints and graphs and that, but perhaps members of the committee themselves sort of piping up, and if you're able to attend, of course, I chaired this subcommittee, this is what we did, or something like that, just to make it a little more fun, interesting. That's the thought.
Yeah, these are all really good suggestions. I can put together a preliminary agenda for the public hearing and share it with the committee and hone in the details for the day. But I'm hearing, beginning with some sort of an engaging overview, and then soliciting feedback sort of on the process and objectives of the fund as currently designed, as well as input on research topics. Jenny?
Yeah, I think that would be great. And once that is formalized and agreed upon, that it would be incumbent and really beneficial for for those of us who represent organizations and have direct outreach to farmers throughout the state, to make outreach specifically to our lists. So that may mean people may get the information more than once, but I think that that's okay in this situation.
Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts on the public hearing? Okay, so I will follow up then via email with a preliminary agenda for January 11th. We'll refine that and share it with our respective networks. If there's nothing else, I wish you all a happy holiday season, and I will see you in person in January.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks so much,
Have
Beth.
a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.